I see you. I got you. Good.
I call this meeting of the Williamsburg-James County School Board to order. Ms. Surza, could you take the roll, please?
Ms. Cook.
Here.
Mrs. Cardasco.
Here.
Ms. Emanuel.
Here.
Mr. Fuentes.
Here.
Ms. Larson.
Here.
Mr. Nichols.
Here.
Mr. Kelly.
Here. We have Sanaya Atwood here from James River Elementary School, who's going to lead us in the pledge. So if everybody could rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag, to the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sanaya. Great job. Can I get a motion for certification of the closed session?
Mr. Chairman, I certify the best of each member's knowledge, the Williamsburg-James City County School Board, while in closed session, discussed only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirement, as stated in Virginia law, and that only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Surza?
Mrs. Cardasco.
Aye.
Ms. Emanuel.
Aye.
Mr. Fuentes.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Nichols.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Thank you. Can I get a motion for approval of the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Surza?
Ms. Emanuel.
Aye.
Mr. Fuentes.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Nichols.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Mrs. Cardasco.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye. Takes us to 5.01, announcement, superintendent's report. Dr. Constantino?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Today, the state released pass rates for the Standards of Learning exams taken last spring. Very pleased to announce that based on all of these scores, all WJCC schools will be fully accredited. The state will release final accreditation status later this fall. WJCC students exceeded state averages in every subject: math, English, reading, English writing, science, and history social studies. Additionally, at the division level, students divided into state-determined subgroups exceeded or maintained last year's scores in 40 of the 45 categories. Our limited English proficient students made significant strides in English reading, math, and science, and students in the 3 state-defined gap groups also made significant gains in reading and math. All of these improvements are direct reflections of the intense focus and unwavering efforts of our students and staff. We did, however, see a slight dip in the overall pass rates of students with disabilities. We're looking at those results. We'll continue our efforts to enhance our instructional program in that area. I would like to congratulate our students, teachers, school leaders, families, and support staff for everything they did to help ensure that our students were successful. As the tests have become more rigorous and the challenges have become more complex, WJCC has risen to meet every obstacle thrown our way. Please join me in celebrating these accomplishments.
Yeah, I just want to add there that good results don't happen by accident, and kudos to the students and the teachers for their good hard work and making those results happen. So,
thank you. One other announcement, Mr. Chair. Families that have not registered their students for school should do so as soon as possible. Our annual plea. School offices are open Monday through Thursday this week and Monday through Friday, beginning of the week of August 17th. Please do not hesitate to contact your child's school for more information or the central office if you are new to the area. Registration information and forms are available on the division website at wjccschools.org. Those are the announcements I have this evening, Mr. Chair.
appreciate that. 6.01 board recognitions. The first recognition I'd like to have is for the board itself. This meeting was originally scheduled for last Tuesday. Due to several conflicts that we had with people's schedules, we were able to we modified the schedule to meet this week, and it's good to see everyone represented, and I thank everyone for their patience and willingness to be flexible on that. So, Dr. Constantino, we have any other board recognitions?
We have just a few.
I signed a few certificates today, as I
did.
recall.
Tonight, we want to recognize several teams and athletes for their accomplishments. With summer break, we realize that a number of students may not have been able to attend tonight, but we will call each athlete's name to ensure that every student is recognized. Jamestown's boys soccer team was named the 2015 VHSL 4A state champions. Students, as your name is called, and if you're here, please come forward to accept our thanks and recognition. First is Ben Carper. I also would like to announce that Ben was also named to the All-State soccer team as well. Ben. Next, we have Wilson Koffenauer. Wilson, too, was also named to the All-State soccer team. Wilson? Sanjay Das. Logan Estes. Riley Fitzgerald. Levi Hagee. Trevor Hartnett. Jonathan Henry. Brandon Jordan. Dan Kelly. Michael Lawrence. Duncan McDevitt. Kevin Parker. Drake Renner. Cameron Ross. Francisco Santucci. Ryan Satira. AJ Stewart. David Stinson. Vinny Stumpo. Kevin Tripp. Carter Weissenflug. Kyle Wade. Jeff Wolins. And also add that Jeff was also named to the All-State soccer team. And Davis Wood. Jamestown soccer team. 4A state champions.
All right, if you could squish just a little bit.
Squish.
Squish.
He's got that little
More than
dangling
one.
cord behind his head there.
Poor
That's
Cameron.
okay. Photoshop is our friend. Any parents still taking pictures?
We want to also recognize a number of Jamestown students for their individual accomplishments. Maddie Clevenger, All-State 4A Girls Soccer. Maddie here. Evan Lowry, All-State 4A Baseball. Anna Walter, 4A girls tennis singles.
My word.
Wait. Thank you.
Abigail Larson, Joel Barib, Taylor Vitaletti, and Margaret Williams were named All-Americans for the 200 free relay.
One more. Thank you.
Lafayette's baseball team made school history when they won their first ever state championship. The team was also named the Virginia High School League's 2015 3A state champions. And if we have baseball team members here, when I call your name, please come forward. Jared Antle. Jeremiah Antle. Mitch Barrett. John Barton. Austin Bauer. Chase Bauer. Daniel Blankenship. Patrick Cheek. Austin Cohn. Preston Goodbar. John Keene. Matthew Keene. Andre Lipsius. Luke Lipsius. Get crowded up there. Chase Smith. And Braden Venus. Ladies and gentlemen, the Lafayette High School State Champion Baseball Team.
Coaches, please come forward. Four guys in the front.
Okay, if you can't see me, I can't see you. You two are going to have to... And Coach, if you could just make sure you're not a disembodied head. Felicia. Front row, blue shirt. Coach, could you come over on this side? No, Coach. There you go. All right. That'll work. All right, everybody this way. All right, everybody look. Lots of cameras. Back row. If you could just scooch in more, just a little bit. There you go. All right. Thank you.
Nope, not, and you're not done yet. Mr. Chair, Warhill also had several I guess I'll
Be careful when you're going out.
Well, I'm not done. We'll roll with it. Mr. Chair, members of the board, Warhill also had several individual state winners at the 3A State Outdoor Track and Field Championships. Chris Short became the 800-meter champion. Is Chris here? Chris Short, Ethan Johnson, Brian Stovall, and Trayvon Loft were all named 4x400 state relay champions. Congratulations to them as well. Thank you for allowing us to recognize these students tonight, and that concludes our recognitions.
Thank you.
Now we're going to have to project.
I'm going to bring up your insert.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Constantino. It's always good to do a lot of recognitions in August. It's unusual that we have that many in August. So that takes us to 7.01 citizens' comments. We have one speaker card tonight. Mr. Nichols.
At this point in our meeting, where citizens are invited to address the school board, those citizens desiring to speak have submitted speaker cards to the clerk prior to the start of tonight's meeting. When a speaker's name is called, the speaker comes to the podium and states his or her name for the record and directs his or her comments to the chair of the board. In order to promote a listening and respectful environment, please avoid applauding, verbal outbursts, or any other type of demonstration when the speaker is addressing the school board. Personnel matters are not considered in public meetings. The school board requests that all speakers refrain from making any reference to specific individuals in any form or fashion. The school board's role is to listen to the speaker rather than to respond to his or her comments. Each speaker is allocated 3 minutes to make his or her comments. The school board asks each speaker to respect this time limitation. Time may not be yielded to another speaker. Your acceptance and adherence to these guidelines will be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Mrs. Cordasco?
Peg Gorman. And I'm going to have to just probably say the whole night over and over. If it keeps on raining like this, everybody's going to have to really be louder. Okay. Because it's hard to hear as it is. Is this the speaker? Yeah, it's up there.
Louder than Mother Nature.
Kind of hard to.
Good news is the roof appears to be
It kind of opened up when I walked in. Good evening, members of the school board, Ms. Kardashian. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Peg Borman, and I've been a resident of James City County for 45 years. I put 5 girls through the school system and 4 grandchildren. So I'm happy to be able to come here before you tonight and talk a little bit about what the Clean County Commission is doing with schools. We have been happy to report that with the help of the staff, we've been instrumental in getting recycling into the cafeterias at some of the elementary schools. And we would really like to promote it more into the middle schools and the high schools if possible. We have a club called the Recycling Rangers in the elementary school, and we have with parent and teacher volunteers that work with this. And we would also, can you hear me okay? Okay. We would like to also do more classroom presentations within the elementary level on recycling and litter prevention, because we feel like that if we get them when they're young, they will carry it on to their adulthood. And we have quite a lot of materials that we can share with the schools in the elementary level especially. So we would like to have you support us in that segment. We have, as members, have spent many hours volunteering in the elementary schools, and I was there this summer to the summer school program and had 75 second graders that we presented a program to. And I was really surprised because some of those little kids knew quite a bit about it. So I was really happy about that surprise. We also want to get the recycling lunch program into the schools that's not doing it. Claire Bird Baker is top on the list. They tell me that they established it. Stonehouse is doing well. Some of the others, Matoika and Matthew Whaley, I think we're looking at starting this, hopefully this fall. Because we know that it's valuable to the county in the prevention of these items going into the landfill, but also some of the items will be reproduced into something else of consumable value. And speaking of that, each year one of the schools gets a recycled bench from their plastic bags. And I was told the other day that Norwich got it this year, so that makes me happy because that's in my neighborhood, and I helped them get it. So, but we're going to continue to try to work with the cafeterias, and keep the waste out of the landfill. And we'd encourage you to help us minimize this, if at all possible, through your efforts. They're using the styrofoam trays when they run out of the last ones, the plastic ones. So we're kind of encouraging you to try to eliminate this because that goes into the landfill. And but at this point, it's been a really wonderful experience for us to see firsthand how the children are being educated and just to experience the enthusiasm of the students. I know that the schools have had to have their staff reduced and there are fewer bodies to help with all of the elements that it takes to educate our children. This no doubt puts a strain on the current staff, so I like to urge each and every one of you and anybody that's listening in the county to go out and volunteer with our schools.
Time is up.
Time's up? Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Borman. Thank you for your good work that you do for the county.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that.
I've known Mrs. Boardman, I think, for the whole 45 years she's been in town. And I just want to say thank you for your many services to the community. It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. No other speakers tonight? Takes us to 8.01, school lunch price increase. Dr. Constantino?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Each year we come to you with data required by the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act and school lunch price increases. Ms. Haley is here to explain the agenda item and take any questions you might have.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. The Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act, which was authorized or took effect in 2010, requires that any schools participating in the National School Lunch Program ensure that schools provide the same level of support to lunches served to students paying for lunch as for the lunches served to students eligible for the free lunch. And the Act states that if the paid lunch price is less than the difference between the federal reimbursement for the free lunch and the federal reimbursement for the paid lunch, then the lunch price must increase. And our price is less. The free reimbursement for 2014-15 was $3.06. The paid reimbursement was 36 cents. The difference is $2.70, and all of our prices are lower than that. So according to the Act, our lunch price would need to increase for the 15-16 school year. So we are asking that the board would approve a lunch increase for the 15-16 school year of $2.50 for elementary, $2.60 for middle, and $2.75 to $3.50 for the high school. And that is a 10-cent increase over the prices from last school year.
Any questions from board members? Let's go.
Ms. Haley, can you explain why there's a range in the high school price as opposed to the other two?
Because we do have a salad bar at all three of the high schools, and the higher end of that range is for the salad bar.
Mrs. Cordasco?
Is this the third year in the row that we're increasing?
I believe it is, and it is because of the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act.
And I wasn't certain as to the status, because I thought that it was up for some changes or some reauthorizations. And I also thought I had read that there was additional flexibility that was being offered because of some of the issues with it. Have you been familiar with the latest iteration?
Yes, it is up, the child nutrition is up for reauthorization this school year. There is some flexibility in there, but right now, we have a positive balance, fund balance, but there is a cap, or there's a stipulation in there, we don't have the max, or the amount that we would need to not have to increase the price. There's a little wording in there. They are working on getting that part out of there, but at the current point in time, it has not been changed.
So when you say flexibility, is that based on if you're showing a loss, you get flexibility? Or help me understand what that flexibility actually means.
If you have a positive fund balance that is of a certain amount, you do not have to increase your lunch prices. We have a positive fund balance, but we don't have enough to meet that requirement. They are trying to take that out so that if you just have a positive balance period, you would not have to increase your price, but that has not been changed as of yet.
What is the ratio?
For that amount, I believe it is if you have a 3-month operating expense positive fund balance.
And what do we have?
I would have to get back to you with a definitive answer on that. I think we probably have about a month and a half.
Okay. And so is that something that nutrition people around the country are doing advocacy as far as the Congress is concerned, or?
To get that stipulation removed, yes, ma'am.
There was also, as I understand it, we have very little flexibility in terms of what we can serve with, we have to give them fruits and vegetables even if they tell us that they're going to throw them away. And if, say, our fruit is the apple and there are 50 apples left, we can't do anything with those but throw them away. Is that still correct?
If you have the apples left and they have not been taken by the students, if they've not...
Right, but they can't say no to the fruit.
They have to take a fruit at the current point in time, yes.
So you're essentially throwing them away.
Correct, and that also is in there to be changed, but at this point in time has also not been changed. That's part of the reauthorization. That is one of the bills that is out there to have that also changed.
I wonder if there, I'm not necessarily just directing this to you, but I wonder if there might be a way for us to have some information on what it is that's proposed to be changed so that we can be a part of that advocacy. I think I said this last year when it happened, and I think I said this the year before that when this happened. 10 cents doesn't seem like a lot, but when you multiply it by a number of meals a week and a number of children, it adds up. And there are many people that are right on that bubble that they don't qualify for those lunches, and so I remain very concerned, also given the fact that there's some other expenses coming down the pike for people in this county. So would it be possible to ask for those pieces of information?
I think we'd start with the VSBA. They have a federal advocacy. I'm assuming they're involved with it. If not, we'll get the information.
Okay, that would be great. And that's no reflection on you, and I'm sure that the fact that we have a month-and-a-half positive balance reflects a lot of good things about the food that we serve, because kids are actually choosing to purchase. So I hope, please don't take that in any way. Okay.
Ms. Larson?
Thank you. Somewhat related, but how, a few years ago, we did a major push. You worked very hard to get the free and reduced lunch applications out during the summertime to make sure that families that were eligible were able to take advantage of the program. Also making sure that it didn't have quite the same stigma at the high school level, because lots of times the high schoolers don't participate. How are we doing in that regard as far as getting families to sign up for the program, and do we have those applications out in different areas around town?
We still continue to do that. We take them out. I don't have the exact number of locations, but we're still taking them out to the similar type of locations, apartment complex, the offices, barbershops, that type of thing throughout the county and the city. We also, the direct certification where they're automatically eligible, it used to be that you only got that list from the state once per year, and now we're getting it 6 times per year, which also has added a lot, because those lists are updated quite frequently now, and that's also added additional families. We're also have an online application in addition to the hard copies that go home with the students too. So we are getting the word out, and it's also on the website. The online application as well as the hard copy could be downloaded if you didn't want to do the online.
Okay. And then as far as going back to the act that we're talking about, what type of feedback are you getting from your cafeteria managers as far as waste? When this first started and everybody, we have to give X amount every day, has there been a decrease in waste, or kids, since they are getting this every day, are they realizing the importance of fruits and vegetables, or is it still the same amount of stuff going in the trash? And I realize we don't have a trash monitor, but I imagine your cafeteria people are pretty on it. And so what kind of feedback are you getting from them?
I would say in the elementary schools, it's pretty much been accepted, and they are very willing to try the new fruits and vegetables. We even do in a lot of the schools, they get little stickers if they try, another fruit or a vegetable. And we're seeing less waste in the elementaries. Middle and high, it depends on what the item is, what the menu is. I'd say it's been reduced somewhat in the middle, but in the high, not a lot of difference.
By then, you've made up your mind what your taste...
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I can remember back when my kids were at James River, and the Kelray Farms would come out.
We had the fresh fruit and vegetable
and they
grant.
would bring all these really different fruits. And the kids were really willing to try different things in elementary school.
And we still apply for that every year, but unfortunately our free and reduced percentage is not quite high enough that we've not been receiving that, but we still apply for it every year.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that you keep doing that. So, and then I had a question, but it left me. So, I noticed that you're trying to hire another chef.
Yes.
And how's that going?
We are still seeking applications. The last I checked, about 2 weeks ago, we did not have a great number of folks that had applied. So we are still seeking another chef to hire through the SHIP program.
So if somebody's watching tonight.
Please apply.
Go on our
It-
website?
it's
Okay.
on- yes.
All right. Great
It is on the
opportunity.
website, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fuentes?
Yes, the federal reimbursement rate, it's 306, and that's the rate right now, right?
That was the rate for the 2014-15 school year, yes. It will go up slightly for the 15-16 school year, but at the time this had to be submitted, we did not have the new rate. It had not been published yet.
Okay, but the difference will end up staying about 270, right?
Correct.
Or, exactly 270, or, because it looks like that's what it's been for a little while, so I don't know if they increase it by the same.
It will probably remain the same. They issue every year for us to calculate, to conform to this act. They call it a paid lunch equity, and 270 is what we had to use for this particular school year.
Okay, so, and the reimbursement, so for free, obviously, the students get it for free. Our reduced lunch, what do they pay?
The reduced students pay 30 cents for breakfast and 40 cents for lunch.
So, and then how do we get reimbursed for that?
We also receive reimbursement for the reduced students. Hang on one second, and I can tell you what that amount is.
So that's just, the reason that's not on there is because that's not part of the calculation.
Correct.
So that's why that wasn't included.
Right, but we do receive, in this, to compare, in this same school year, we would have received $2.66 for reduced meal, $2.66. But it's not part of the calculation.
Okay, so in the end, though, we end up getting for the reduced ones, based on them paying, would you say it was 30?
40 cents for lunch, so it comes out to the 306.
Comes out to 306, okay. And then, there was another question on there, but I think, so in order to get to where we need to be, because you're saying it's 270 right now, and I think it's the average price paid lunch, the average paid lunch.
Correct.
So if by doing this, by going up 10 cents, does that bring that to the average, or are we still below the average?
We're still below because you have to actually take the number of meals that you have in each one of the price points, but the law has a cap that you can only go up 10 cents per year.
Right, I couldn't tell, but that goes to the earlier question on the high school, the 275 to 310, I guess our average there then is 275, right?
Correct. And when I do that calculation, I know how many meals we sell at the 275 and how many we sell at the 310, right.
Okay, so it looks like then next year we catch up, more likely? Or are we always playing catch up?
It is hard to say. At this point, we are still playing catch up, unless we can get the Congress to change that one little clause in there that will allow us not to have to raise the price.
Thank you.
Any other comments from board members? Mrs. Emanuel?
Ms. Haley, I know we have salad bars in all the high schools. How is that? Is that good consumption?
Yes, they're very popular in the high schools. They're going very well, particularly on the, we have a taco salad day that we do twice a week, and that's the most popular, but even on the other days, they're still very popular.
So, in effect, if the high school kids, if they're eating salad bar, they're still getting nutritious
Correct.
meal.
Yes.
Yeah, even though they don't do the fruits and vegetables in the same way.
Right, and they are getting they are receiving fruits and vegetables on the salad bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the salad bar, you can't, free and reduced can't use the salad bar?
Oh, yes, they can.
They can?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
all students can participate in the salad bar.
Okay, that's great. I think that's an important thing for that.
And that, they have salads in the elementary schools, but they don't have a bar, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you, Ms. Haley. Appreciate your good work, and I know you're getting ready for September 8th.
It will be here soon.
It will be here sooner than...
Thank you.
Thank you. 8.02 fiscal year 2017 budget calendar. Dr. Constantino?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. During the budget process last year, the school board asked if the administration would look at backing up the timeline of the budget cycle, primarily to introduce an earlier conversation regarding the capital improvement plan. So I asked Ms. Berta to help us figure out a way that we could have an earlier conversation, given that we will be getting information shortly on a facilities index, and given the attention to the CIP, we are proposing tonight, earlier than ever, quite frankly, a bit of a change in the budget calendar, and Ms. Berta can talk specifically about that, but primarily to kind of hit the high points. We would be presenting a proposed capital improvement plan to you in November, and we would be adding a public hearing on that particular plan. So there would be a third hearing, and I think this speaks to the concern that the board raised during last year's budget. Ms. Berta can certainly add anything or take any, either one of us can take questions, but that's the high points of the agenda item.
Welcome, Ms. Berta.
Good evening. One other thing I'd like to highlight, by changing this process and doing the CIP earlier, we always get the question from the Planning Commission, can we see your capital improvement plan? This gives us the ability to have that reviewed by you and vetted through you before we share that with another body. So the point of having that approved in December, one, takes it off of our plates and we can really focus on the operating budget, but it also gives us the ability to pass that on to our county and city so that they can begin vetting their funding process. So everything else is pretty standard in the operating budget as far as the timeline and how we have typically proceeded in Williamsburg, James City County. But the CIP is a big change, and staff is ready to move forward with that with your approval so that we can begin that process sooner than ever.
Any questions from board members? Mrs. Cordasco?
I guess my question is, some capital improvement projects are more apparent to parents and some are more apparent to us. Is there a process in which there could be some solicitation of input from the community even prior to submitting that? Because, for instance, we saw this year with the tennis courts that there was quite a bit of pent-up frustration with that. And it wasn't that we were unaware or that we didn't care about it, but I don't know that maybe we were quite as aware of it as the parents there were. And, even though many of us have children in school, if you're not in that particular school, you're not going to be aware of it. So I understand that we'd be bringing them to respond to what we were putting out there. Is there any way we could solicit input before we actually did it?
I think the public hearing is a perfect forum, not only to talk about what we propose, but to share ideas that they see in the division. I think that's the opportunity for them to speak. I will say that the facility condition index does give us more validity to what we see in the 10-year plan, so we're in a better position than ever to be able to have validity behind what we're proposing. So I think that's another valid point that we'll have this year that we haven't had in the recent past.
Dr. Constantino?
Mr. Kelly, just also, Mr. Snipes and the operations staff does conduct a CIP committee and they do ask building principals in the buildings about their perceived needs. It's possible that we could ask the buildings to perhaps be a bit more aggressive in seeking input at their own schools so that when that information comes to us, it may be more representative.
Mr. Fuentes?
So what changed? Is that all that changed? These 3 blocks were the CIP?
Yeah, the separating from the CIP and the operating budget to have that process completed earlier, so that beginning with your retreat, we really focus on the operating budget going forward for fiscal year 17.
So everything else stayed the same? I guess what I'm asking.
Yep.
Yes.
And then in the past, we had some of the budget process started in the fall that included the budget. So
And we still will have that internally. We as division leaders will capture that information from the cost center managers, get their feedback about initiatives that they see coming in their schools, and that's what we bring to you in January, kind of as the first look.
So Oh, so we're doing so we're going to be doing 3 public hearings then?
Correct.
Okay. So that changed. So the one in the fall that we used to do, it seemed to me like I thought we did one in the fall for the budget. No?
We have,
Oh, that's right. We haven't. It was in the old days.
Dr. Constantine?
traditionally, we've not had any public discussions on the budget prior to the governor's release in December, usually around the 19th or 20th of December. We've come to you in the fall with the budget calendar, usually in October.
Yep.
And then all of the internal processes start in the fall. This is the first time, based on last year's conversations, where we're truly going to present for your consumption and public consumption the CIP in November. But once that's done, the rest of that calendar is the same as it's always been. And we are suggesting to the board a third public hearing, that third hearing in November focused on the capital improvement project.
Okay.
Good. Ms. Cook?
So can you help me understand, between the February 16th presentation of the superintendent's budget and the proposed March 15th approval, how many times does this body convene to discuss it, not including the 16th, because it's all sort of new?
I can answer that. We will put the budget on every agenda item between the time we present it and the time you have to approve it. There are years where the regular scheduled meetings of the school board has sufficed in deliberations in creating a budget, and there have been times when the board has called extra meetings because they needed time. So it really is the purview of the board to say, you know what, I think we're going to have another meeting, and that has happened. So, but from the time it's presented, we put it on as a discussion item every meeting, and certainly
But how many meetings do you anticipate that being, regularly scheduled meetings? I know we
well,
have
there's 2 a month.
Right,
So
so,
the budget is presented in the second meeting of February, so you'll have the night that it's presented and 2 meetings.
but that second meeting is the proposed approval, so.
Correct.
So really,
You have 1 meeting in between.
yeah.
Yeah, the 16th, another meeting, and then the joint meeting
Right.
with all the funding partners, and then the public hearing.
That one meeting feels a little light to me.
Right.
Concur.
Well, we wind up another meeting invariably.
What's the driver for the February 16th presentation versus the February 14th, second presentation?
Time to prepare from the January retreat.
So the governor releases his numbers in December.
He traditionally will release his numbers right before the holidays, 19, 20, traditionally has been around. That could change, but that's about when it's been.
But then the General Assembly changes in January, February, right?
Most of the time.
Right. And so
Most of the time is like all the time?
there's no...
Well, it's a re-benchmarking year.
Yeah, it's a re-benchmarking year as well. So there's no clear information from the state. Part of the thought process has been to wait to see if you could get more definitive answers from the state.
Right.
Could we create an earlier presentation? Yes, I suppose. If the board wanted to, we could. My concern would be how much of that would be hypothetical.
Right, what we do know is that April 1st, we have to send it to the funding body.
Yes, sir.
I would rather schedule something and then not have to have it than scramble to try to find a date that works for everybody. Even if it's a 30-day window.
Well, it may be one way to work this issue is in January, when the board reorganizes and sets its calendar, it may just want to have this conversation and decide
I think that's a good point.
what meetings you'd like to have. And that might avoid the challenges of finding a date when we don't have a scheduled meeting. One idea.
Yeah. Mrs. Kordowski?
Two things. For the purpose of those watching, would you describe what a re-benchmarking year is? Because not everybody's going to know what that is. And I guess, here, I'm just going to hear what you're saying. I guess sometimes what I get frustrated about is that we make a plan based on what we think is going to happen in December, and then everything changes. And so in some ways, I have always hoped that there could be a little more room on the other end of it, so that as we got closer to the end of the General Assembly, we would have, because it seems like we always end up really making major changes because we plan on it being one thing and it's something else. And, I don't know if that's something that is offered to us, any additional flexibility, but it would seem to make sense because we kind of spin our wheels sometimes.
The dates are in statute, I think.
Yeah, the
The
dates are.
April 1st date's in statute, but the March 15th date's
Correct.
not. So
That's
no.
right, that's what I was.
So I think what Mrs. Cordasco and Mrs. Cook are talking about is maybe closer to the end of March, we put a potential or a proposed or a possible board date to approve the budget, just so that we can have that on the calendar. And since this is a public document, we might want to put in here April 1st, milestone must be sent to the funding bodies, and then I believe we have to approve it. Comes back from the funding bodies, and we have to approve it by June 1st?
Within 30 days of the approved state budget is when we have to get it to the county.
And when is that?
So
state
that's what gives you the flexibility in the April 1st. But as long as you approve the adjusted budget and get us rolling for the new fiscal year, you're good. Once the county and city do their thing,
Right.
we have some flexibility there.
Right, okay. So do the county and the city have a timeline where they have to give it back to us?
They do, May 15th.
Okay. That might be an interesting date to put on here too as well. Okay, and then Mrs. Cordasco whispers into my ear about the rebenchmarking.
Yes. Every 2 years, the state General Assembly goes back through and looks at how they allocate SOQ funding, composite index, and standards of quality, composite index, and figure out how to reallocate the funding that the state gives to different school divisions. So every 2 years, we go through this cycle. They do a biennial budget, but they can change that second year, as we know. They did this year. So it's not fixed and set in stone for that second year, but at least it gives us a bit of a planning point.
Ms. Larson?
So are you wanting to change this calendar, or you're going to wait and change at the beginning of the year when you set your...
Well, what I'd like to do on the budget calendar is put those two dates on there, and then put a date in the end of March.
Another TBD?
A potential TBD, school board approves budget if we can't get it done by the 15th. Go ahead.
To be clear, on this document.
Yes.
Just list a March TBD, but in January, when we present a proposed calendar, we would pick a date, or was that something that I'm thinking about January, when I hand you, these are the proposed meetings, does it say TBD, or do you want us to pick the third date?
I like to pick a date, put a dart on the board to say, okay, this is when we will approve the budget if we can't get it done on the 15th date. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, because
Tuesday?
that
Mr.
way,
Nichols?
with the board changing too, at least it's a fixed date and everybody has to, it's right there out front.
It's on their calendar.
It's on the calendar.
Right. Any other comments from board members? I guess one question I have is the December 15th adoption of the capital improvement plan. So when we vote on December 15th, that is the plan, that's what's out there, that's what's going to be.
Correct.
Okay, and so then all of 16, we're just worried about the operating budget.
Correct.
And
Mr. Fuentes.
so
I'll come back to you.
when that goes over the planning commission and all that, the stuff that we've approved and what we've said, then of course, then the county kind of looks at certain things and then they do their little thing with it. So what happens? Do we go back and look at it again?
Yeah, you would look at that and approve that as part of your final budget
At the final.
after the tweaks. Yeah, we would present that to you in the May timeframe after the county has done their thing with their operating side, and you'd approve both as our final product. So once it comes back from the county approved for the capital improvement, we can't make any adjustments with that. That's what they've vetted as the approved projects for the capital improvement plan.
When do they approve? And when you say county, you're talking about the board of supervisors?
Board of Supervisors and City Council.
And the city council.
Right, so when does that get approved? Is that when they approve that budget in the March or whatever timeframe?
In May. They do their piece in May, and it comes back to us. But the planning commission needs it in December so that they can vet that through the planning commission and their process, because they have a whole different process once they get our plan.
Okay, because what I like about this is, okay, we're doing it earlier, like you said, but it also becomes a point where, okay, we as the board want to set priorities for what we think we get done, and it goes to them, and they're looking at it saying, this gives enough, I'm hoping that we can have the dialogue with the county on why we think certain things are important as a board, which I don't think we've done in the past. This would allow that. Am I wrong?
You are correct, because before we would never approve it, we wouldn't approve it until
Right.
Yes.
well past the calendar for the planning commission
So
to
right.
get to that budget.
We're a little bit more involved.
When we speak to the county in a joint session, it has been theory in the past. This year, this is an approved budget by the school board, and here's why we approved it. So
The CIP.
I think it's a much stronger, it's a much stronger presentation.
Right, and so we can focus on what we think are the priorities based on the CIP. So yes, right, okay, I get that. Okay.
Mr. Nichols, do you have anything?
I was looking for the public presentation part.
I just want to say that I think this is a really much stronger process than we've used heretofore, and I think it'll be clearer to the funding agents how we, what kind of thought that goes into the process, and so I really want to applaud you for doing this. And I think it was kind of Joe's idea to split them, and I think that was a good suggestion.
Mrs. Cordasco.
I also wanted to say thank you. I think it's a great way to do this. I think it's a good idea. But I also could not conclude any of my remarks without saying that we have to look at buses. I know, but to me, I know there was a discrepancy as to how the county views it and how we view it, but it's so integral to stuff that we want to do moving forward that I just cannot say enough that has to be something.
Just to remind the board, the county views the purchase of new additional buses as capital improvement and looks at the purchase of replacement buses as operational.
Yeah. So, yeah, again,
So-
if we're having that capital, I just want to kind of get my 2 cents in early because, especially with all the changes that are going on at New Horizons and different opportunities that are coming, we have to be prepared to do that. And I understand that that is human capital that we have to also invest in, but I really would like to put that in there.
Mr. Nichols?
Yeah.
Mr. Nichols?
What I like about it is also an opportunity for the public to speak to the issue, which they haven't normally had in the past, except if it was lumped in with the general budget. So dividing it out like that and then preparing us for the joint meeting with the governing bodies, I think is really very important. And recognizing the constraints of our budget, but also I've been pushing buses too for all the time I've been on the board, and the school division is growing, so somehow or another it's going to be a challenge for us to get ahead of the power curve rather than just simply trying to meet it and be on the three-tiered system that we're on. I'd like to see that changed.
Mr. Fuentes?
I know that we're not here to talk about specifics of the CIP, but since it came up, for some reason I cannot recall ever seeing buses on the CIP. Have they been on there?
Yes, sir.
They were on your original plan, this year.
Yeah, they were this year.
Okay, so let me ask, so they were on the original plan, I don't know what was on there, I can't remember, but then they came off?
When the county and city vetted it through their process, they were not considered to be CIP purchases.
We didn't kick them one more year?
No, sir.
We don't,
And they took it away, so we need to figure out something else.
we don't,
You certainly can add it back in your process, but once it's vetted through the city and county process, we can't tweak what they approve in their capital improvement plan.
To be
So-
clear, though, the monies were moved
Yes.
to the operation budget because the replacement buses were seen, and I believe the county contract states it, that replacement buses, the county city contract, excuse me, states that replacement buses are seen as operating expenses.
in that part, I understand.
There's been some debate over the years about about.
No, I didn't realize, though, I'd always heard about the operational part, but I didn't realize that they were saying new buses were capital. That's, I guess, for some reason, I did not hear that part for some reason, that the new buses were, so I understand the logic that they're using there, although usually it's one or the other, but I just didn't recall it being in the CIP, and a lot of times we have that item on there, and a lot of items get kicked to a later date, so it just keeps coming up.
Previous administrations have argued the definition of capital improvements, number of years, et cetera, depreciation, and have argued, I think convincingly, that bus purchases, regardless of what they are, would be a capital improvement. Not everybody sees it that way, and I think the last iteration of the contract may have clarified how this is going to work from this point forward.
Mrs. Cook, you going to bring us back to our agenda item?
Yes,
Okay.
I apologize if this is a repeat because I had to step out, but I concur with Chairman Kelly's recommendation on additional dates to add, but I would also suggest or request that Planning Commission dates be added, as well as City Council and James City County budget dates, because then that gives us a comprehensive view of where the division staff and/or leadership, governing leadership may be on tap to attend meetings. So I think that just gives us a fuller picture of the whole process as it intersects with our funding body.
Do you think they've set those yet?
This may be a fluid document so that
Sure.
you can adopt what we're presenting now. It certainly can change, but I'm not quite sure if they've outlined their process because they start much later than we do, just by the sheer nature of business. We certainly can add those as we find that information out, but I don't know that it would be readily available at this point in time.
Placeholder or something would be
Yeah.
good to
Okay.
see.
Okay. Any other questions on the calendar? Thank you, Ms. Bertha.
Thank you.
8.03, authorization of signatures in absence of division superintendent. Dr. Constantino?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Each year, the State Department requests the board authorize staff member or members recommended by the superintendent to sign reports and documents in the absence of the superintendent. We have traditionally authorized the deputy superintendent and chief financial officer to sign those documents, and I once again make that request and recommendation to the board.
Okay. Any discussion from board members on this agenda item we do every year? Okay. Moving on, 8.04, policy GBA, prohibition against discrimination and harassment, second reading.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this is the second reading, the second conversation regarding policy GBA. I'm going to ask Mr. Baker and Mr. Lacey to come forward to talk about some of the changes that have occurred since our last conversation.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Constantino, members of the board. This is a revision of policy GBA, prohibition against discrimination and harassment. It is to align with the VSBA policy and has been reviewed by our school board attorney. It separates the GBA policy and the GFHA policy, which is employees versus students. It will provide a formal complaint procedure, including timelines for investigations and appeal process. It identifies the compliance officer and the alternate compliance officer. It provides an informal complaint procedure if the complainant and the person accused of harassment agree to resolve the complaint informally. And it prohibits retaliation, and it does stipulate an annual notice requirement.
Okay. Any comments from board members on policy GBA as proposed for the second reading? Mr. Nichols?
It seems to be an improvement.
I got energized. And I went back and frankly, what you see is that we separated the personnel policy from the student policy. It's just something sort of anal in that regard. And so that's what we did.
I think it also addressed some of the concerns that were made, if I remember correctly, by board members.
Mm-hmm. We addressed some of those, but we did the majority of those in the student one. In fact, I have a list here. This serves as kind enough to remind me of or concerns, and so I believe we took care of 100% of them, but we'll wait until we get to that policy.
Ms. Cordasco?
I guess I wanted to make sure that I understand we're dealing with two different bodies of people here, no pun intended, but sorry,
So good.
no, I'm sorry. I guess I did not want the teachers or staff to feel as if in perhaps personal conversation, they were not permitted to express some of those same categories that we talked about with regard to philosophical or political or religious speech. I guess I was under the impression that that was to be included. Was I mistaken?
Well, that, I guess maybe I misunderstood, because that provision that we lifted from the code actually is in the student section of the code dealing specifically with the bullying policies. And so we put it in there. First Amendment rights are always the First Amendment rights, and we can't adopt a policy that trumps somebody's First Amendment rights. And putting it in there just states the obvious. I mean, it doesn't give anybody any more rights than they have, and doesn't take away anybody's rights that they do have. I'm not so sure if I was an employee, I would read that and walk away thinking that I could do anything or what have you. I think that basically what we're trying to do is just say, don't go out and harass somebody, intimidate somebody, based upon their race, and everybody knows what that means. I mean, you know what it means, everybody. It's sort of commonsensical,
I don't know, Mr. Lacy, one of the lessons I've learned since being on the school board is never assume that anybody knows anything.
Well, if you think that's a bad assumption, wait until you go across the street. Then you're going to find some doozies over there.
No, I can't comment on that, but would it really create a substantive harm to at least put a nod in there?
I can do it.
Okay.
It won't create a harm. Look, I can do it.
Okay, I would appreciate that, because I certainly want the same protection for our employees that we offer to our
Everybody
students.
be happy.
Okay.
I just want to make the point, though, that it doesn't extend any more rights than people have now.
I understand, but we've done quite a bit to detail, rights, many of which have been settled in law for a long time. And so I certainly would think that reflecting the protections of the Constitution, which also has been around for quite a long time, certainly before either of us.
Maybe not before.
Maybe not me.
If you could indulge me, I would greatly appreciate that.
For you.
Well, I'm sorry, if I could get some clarity, what exactly are we going to be?
Remember the discussion we had about the student policy last meeting, where there's a provision in the Code of Virginia that's talking about bullying policy and what must be in the bullying policy, and there's a statement in there that said that nothing herein is intended to infringe upon an individual's First Amendment rights.
Political, philosophical, or religious.
Whatever that means. Okay, it's in the code. It does nothing more than restate.
What's in the code? What is? Okay.
Now, bearing in mind this, that when you come to student First Amendment rights and employees' First Amendment rights, there's a difference.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to ask you to speak up because I'm having a hard time and I can't imagine what everybody else is.
Well, I was just pointing out to the board that we must remember that in the area of First Amendment rights, the First Amendment rights of students are not coterminous with those of employees or with the public.
I understand.
Okay, so I don't want to say we're going to put this stuff in there and for people to walk out thinking that we've done something extraordinary.
I understand that there are two different categories, hence the beginning of my remarks. But I still think it would be...
Did you say hints?
Yes.
Hints.
I know. I just...
All right.
Ms. Larson, are you good?
You okay?
Thank you.
So we go to the next policy? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Cook.
Mr. Cook? Hey, I'm the chair. You sit there at the microphone.
By the way, I came through a tornado tonight, and I hope I didn't bring it here. But literally, I was following a tornado here that came through eastern Henrico and, part of eastern New Kent and everything. It was interesting. Go ahead.
We're glad you're here.
Well,
You should have turned around.
I'll tell you whether I'm glad I'm here or not after this is over.
This isn't Richmond anymore.
So, the phrase that we're talking about that protects speech,
I will point it out to you, by the way, when we're in the student one.
right,
'cause it's-
and that, am I correct in that is not in the VSBA model policy?
That is not in the VSBA model policy on harassment. It's probably in the VSBA model policy on bullying.
Okay. Can you suppose for us why it's not in the VSBA policy?
Because the statute in which that particular provision appears only deals with bullying. And so my suspicions are that when they went to draft the bullying policy, they probably put it there. But this isn't a bullying policy, so they didn't put it here. Although there's a great deal, Ms. Cook, of overlap. In other words, there's a tremendous amount of overlap.
But do you see any downside for including that language in this policy?
No downside. It's because your First Amendment rights are your First Amendment rights, whatever they may be, and saying you have them is sort of almost redundant, so. Okay.
Mr. Fuentes?
Yes. I guess I'm looking at this one here, so the blue is...
I don't know, you're going to have to, this one here is what?
GBA.
Yes, sir.
And who did the blue and the red and the...
I've only got black and white.
The blue, I think, was what was presented last time, and the red is what we're going forward with now.
And the maroon was prior to that.
Yes. Different color red was prior to that.
No, because there's... Yeah. All right, so it means nothing, because there's stuff that's added from this time, and there's stuff that we're going with this time, so... all right, so what you did was, under... Okay, so I on the top of page 2, I take it should be...
Okay, well, let me tell you what I did. I have a yellow sheet here. Okay.
And that makes it official.
And one of the things, this yellow sheet, attested to by Ms. Surzer, what we did was there was some redundant language in the old policies. So I took and combined 2 paragraphs and deleted the redundant language. So now the first paragraph is basically a amalgamation of the other 2 paragraphs, okay? Says the same thing, but doesn't say it twice, and doesn't treat people as dummies, so that we say it once and we mean it, so like Horton the elephant. Then we took and carved out the student portion of this so that when personnel read it, it will be obvious that this applies to students. As far, and we have a student version of it that's going to come up in a moment. And we don't have any hanging clauses or phrases.
That's what I want to talk to you about.
Okay, do you find what, do you see?
Well, no, it's, okay, you shifted from one dangling problem to, on the top of page 2, I.
Or a 1, depending on...
That's a 1, I think. No, it's an I. I don't know. I kept the numbering system.
It's a 1, because on the bottom of page 2, there's a double I,
yeah,
which would be Roman numeral 2, so I think that's Roman numeral 1.
So, okay, so on the top, that's struck. The definitions, the 1 is struck.
Yeah, I think what Mr. Fuentes has pointed out is on 47, that should be struck as well. Line 47.
Line 47. Line 47.
There's lines in it.
No, what I think line 47 should be moved to line 40. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, wait a minute, are we on GBA here?
Yeah, GBA.
And you think it ought to go where?
Line 47 should be line 40.
Well, there's, okay.
Oh, I see, you're thinking starts the designation?
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
confident it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a simple thing.
Okay,
No,
yeah,
it's
that's
the
sure.
thing, yeah.
Okay, you got that?
So-
Okay, Tim has that.
Okay, so I has to be put there and labeled something because you got A acting as I, right?
We'll take care of it. Just
Okay,
put
yeah, I
it,
know,
just,
that's what I'm saying. You took care of the dangling and then you introduced other.
dangling stuff, okay.
But so, aside from that, then I'm trying to understand, you removed all the students, and I'm trying to understand, why would we remove students from this? Because...
This is a personnel policy.
Sure.
Grown-ups.
And,
It's a grown-up policy.
We had
okay.
another one just for students.
And we have another one just for students.
Okay, so, otherwise, okay, under the harassment, you know, yada, yada, yada.
Can you tell me what line you're talking?
Okay, I'm sorry, 62. It starts off, harassment may consist of, and it goes on.
Yeah.
Hold on, make me sure. These complaints apply to harassment carried out by other employees, students, or third party. So under number 2, which is 57.
57.
Yeah,
Okay.
line 57. You keep the term student, it says employees, students, or third parties.
Well, that's right, because apply to harassment of employees carried out by employees. You can have a student that harasses an employee.
Okay, well, okay, so couldn't you have an employee who harasses a student?
And that will be in the student policy.
Right. Which is next.
Okay.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it, because that's what I was getting to on the third.
This addresses the employee as a victim. The student policy is going to address the student as the alleged victim.
Okay.
Okay?
So, I get it. This is, okay. Yeah, I get it now. When you just use that term, I'm assuming then that the JBA one reciprocates that way.
It's going to be JB, I think, and it is going to reciprocate. Okay?
JB? I thought it was JBCC or something.
No, just don't jump ahead. That's.
Okay, don't be jumping ahead.
Yeah.
Stay cool.
Okay.
It's all right. Any other comments, questions on policy GBA?
Can we get the grammar right? That's all.
Tim has made a note of that.
8.05, policy GBCC, sexual harassment complaint policy, retitled from sexual harassment, sexual violence, second reading.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, I'll ask Mr. Baker and Mr. Lacy to continue. The second of 2 staff policies.
This is a revision of policy GBCC, sexual harassment complaint policy, retitled from sexual harassment, sexual violence, and has been reviewed by the school division attorney.
Once again, I'm going to ask you to speak up.
I apologize.
I don't know if that microphone does anything for
It
you.
doesn't do anything for us, it does something for the TV, but not us.
Can I ask that we have that, if we're going to be here, that we rectify that?
Yep. You're
Yeah.
right.
I think we talked about last time the possibility of using the voice amplification that the teachers actually use. I don't know if that's a possibility, but I think it would be helpful because it is very difficult to hear in different places in the room. And again, as someone who has parents that are hearing impaired, I'm very sensitive to it.
Right.
This separates GBCC and JBCC, employee and student policy. It identifies the responsibilities of the Title IX coordinator. It will provide a formal complaint procedure, including timelines for the investigation and the appeal process. It provides an informal complaint procedure if the complainant and the person accused of harassment agree to resolve the complainant informally, and it prohibits retaliation and does stipulate an annual notice requirement.
This basically is a complaint procedure dealing with the specific topic of sexual harassment complaints. And the reason for that is because Title IX and the courts treat sexual harassment as while it's a form of discrimination, very definitely a form of sex discrimination. It's always been treated sort of differently because of the serious nature of it. The fact that it's so prevalent, certainly in the workplace, and somewhat more prevalent in the student, and can be violent, so on and so forth. And so, in any event, this is basically a complaint policy, and sets forth the complaint process to make sure that everybody knows what it is, knows how to file a complaint, and staff knows how to handle a complaint and resolve the complaint one way or the other in a prompt way. It's fairly straightforward.
Mr. Fuentes?
And I'm okay generally with what I've read. I didn't see anything that in this case I saw where you took all the student stuff out. But going along with the implementation, I guess you're going to end up developing a procedure to implement this.
No, it's in here.
Oh, the procedure is part of the policy?
Yeah, it's like section 4, I think,
Okay,
is the procedure.
let me,
Section 4 and 95, 94.
right, okay. So, both these policies, both of them, as far as implementation, I guess we as a board, and since I've been on the board many times, have talked about educating staff on these issues.
Yes.
And so this isn't for you, I guess this is more to the administration. We've talked about in the past that we need to have business ethic training for our employees. Have we made any progress on that?
Actually, there's training tomorrow morning.
Mr. Fuentes, in the last budget process, we came to you with a budget item to ensure that we covered training videos and also training for for faculty, and that's all been implemented.
Sure, so this would be, these policies, although they're not done yet, so you're going to do training tomorrow, so you'll talk to them, right?
Sure.
But I mean, we're putting in a plan now for training, and this will be annual training that they have to certify that they read and understood and listened and all that.
Correct, we've already done that.
So for risk mitigation purposes, we're doing this. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, risk mitigation would be one side effect of it. To be honest with you, I think the driving motive behind the training is to try to ensure that we don't have any sexual harassment of either staff or students. And to help our folks recognize it, because believe it or not, one of the things I've come to know and love about people who work in our public schools is they're very forgiving folks, and they see the goodness in everything. They want to see goodness in everything. And what we're trying to do is say, yes, that's great, but be on the lookout for certain telltale signs of things that are not right. Prime example would be if you see a student and a teacher or counselor or something behind closed doors for an inordinate period of time, inordinate number of times, that is usually a very big red flag that something may, that not all the time is, but something may be going on, so we don't like that. And so we try to make sure the doors stay open and things of that sort. That's not an indictment on teachers, indictment on counselors, anything. That's just an observation I make based upon beyond a million years of experience.
Well, sometimes it's the window and the door.
We always advise our principals never to allow the window to be covered up.
Right.
Yeah. Not necessarily for this reason, but for many other
reasons, yeah.
Mrs. Cordasco.
Couple of things. I do really appreciate all the work, and I appreciate the fact that we're talking about training. I know that we have had training in the past that we're basically talking about making it more comprehensive. I will say that I personally still remain concerned that many of these changes were prompted, as we discussed last time, by a complaint. And I did ask to see that, and most of it was redacted out. And I feel very uncomfortable that I'm being asked to rule on something without really knowing all the circumstances. I certainly understand the desire to protect, but at the same time, I believe that's something that could have been discussed in closed session while still giving appropriate information and protecting what needed to be protected. So when you receive a 9-page letter and 4.5 to 5 of the pages are redacted out, that's certainly a lot more than the identifying information of the people.
Well, let me, if I may, Mr. Chairman, let me address that. That's not, I know it may appear to be that way. The investigation centered on a complaint by a discrete student, identifiable student, and was found not to be merited. Okay, so we prevailed in the complaint part of it. But that material that was redacted deals specifically with the student's allegations the school, the allegations regarding what went on, that all pertains to that discrete complaint, not to the policy or not to the complaint procedure. As a result, what OCR does, and OCR does this to everybody. I mean, I was explaining to, I don't know whether it was maybe Mr. Flint some previous time, that I've actually been involved in an OCR complaint where parents alleged that their child did not get enough playing time on the baseball team. Had to go through the entire investigation and stuff. So people file these complaints. It doesn't cost them anything to do it. The federal government comes down and causes us to spend a lot of time, effort, and money. But let me assure you of one thing, that what was redacted was actually information pertaining to that individual student in his individual complaint at his individual school. Now, what happens when OCR comes down is, as a matter of routine, they take a look at your policies. One of the first things they ask for is, give us your policies. Okay. So you give them the policies, and they said, we've reviewed the policy. Forget about this kid's complaint, just the policy, your procedure, your complaint procedure. And they made some recommendations with regard to strengthening the complaint procedure. Ironically, some of the recommendations would benefit us because it would extend the amount of time for investigation and things of this sort. So that's what gave rise, as I understand it, to the revision to the policy to tweak our complaint procedure. We already had a complaint procedure. So it's being tweaked. That's what it amounts to. It doesn't have anything to do with what's being prohibited. What's being prohibited doesn't change. It just deals with how you're going to process a complaint. That's basically what it does.
I appreciate your explanation. I still go on record with my frustration. I also felt I had a little bit of conversation with the chairman, and apparently I had a misunderstanding in the last meeting, because it was my understanding that there was going to be a legal opinion issued on SACS that someone had come and given out. So my chairman indicated to me that that was not going to happen. So I did do some additional research. I do have a number of cases that I will disseminate that were decided as recently as July based on that case law. So I just want to make sure that it is on the record that SACS is still good case law, and that many, many, many policies have actually come under fire because they were overly broad. So I went ahead and did that for you. So, I'm so sorry.
Well, let me say this. Let me say this to the board. The United States of America is divided up into a number of circuits. SACS was a third circuit. It was a third circuit case, and was decided in 2001. Virginia is not in the third circuit, so it's not technically the law of Virginia. It's the law of another circuit. I have here a Fifth Circuit case decided in 2010 on the basis of a policy that's more akin to what we have that goes the other way. But the 10th Circuit's not the 4th Circuit. Okay.
I understand, but there are also our Supreme Court cases, and I've cited them as well.
Not on these policies, but that's okay. There's Supreme Court cases on a number of things, but the point being...
Sir, I don't want to contradict you,
then
but...
don't.
With the document I just gave, these are Supreme Court cases, and I have them highlighted, and I'm happy to give you the document, but I'm very concerned about you making statements in public about things that I have not... I asked you to issue a legal opinion. That didn't happen, and so what happens is you make the statement in public, people watch it on TV, they believe that that's the case, and we haven't really wrangled over what those things are. So I mean absolutely no disrespect. I'm not trying to call you out. I did try to get this settled prior to the meeting. I was not able to have that settled prior to the meeting, so I'm happy to have a discussion with you afterwards, but I would ask, please, that you look at all the cited case prior to you making a sweeping statement.
I'm sorry, I don't see the Supreme Court decisions.
They're here. They're in here. Second page.
Okay.
So if we could have that discussion later without a sweeping statement, I would truly appreciate it.
Any other comments on policy GBCC from board members?
Well, yeah, I guess I don't,
Okay, Mrs. Cook had her hand raised. Ms. Cook?
I just wanted to comment that I appreciate the clarification and the procedure outlined here, and I think it's an improvement, and thank you.
Ms. Larson?
okay, where are we going? We seem to have some entanglements going on. So are we going to move ahead with Mr. Lacy has, we've got discussions about offline conversations and
Let me
we
make
brought
it clear.
this.
I don't have a
Hold
problem
on
with
just a minute, let me
policy.
finish.
I think we can move forward with
Let me
the
just
policy.
finish. So if we're moving ahead with this policy for our next meeting to be approved with what Mr. Lacy has presented to us tonight?
Correct, with the slight changes of the, whatever, the I's and the A's and the B's. And
That was the change.
But
That was the previous.
that was the
one.
previous
I'm sorry, the
one.
previous one. Yeah, we're moving forward with what's here unless other board members have comments with other changes and,
Okay.
Can I just say, make it clear that I wasn't asking for a change of the policy?
right.
We understand. So, I think next would
Wait a second,
be...
Dr. Constantine, you had your hand up, or were you good? You're not anymore. Okay, good. So we'll move on to 8.06.
Which is-
8.06, policy JBCC, sexual
Okay,
harassment
We
complaint
move over,
policy.
yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board, will switch staff. Mr. Baker, Mr. Schwa will join us. We'll begin the discussion of the two student policies that have been separated from the staff policies per our previous conversation.
Maybe,
First-
go, I'm sorry.
First, well, I'll say this and then I'll stop talking. 8.06, policy JBCC, sexual harassment complaint policy, is the next on the agenda, which will be followed by policy JB, which is a change from policies that you saw at the last meeting, and Mr. Lacy can take us through all of this, or however you choose to do it.
Well, JBCC is basically the same policy, albeit relating to students, that GBCC was. See, I hate these ones, gosh.
So do I.
Yeah, so do I.
So much.
Who came up with this?
That's my personal gripe. And then it's basically the same policy. It deals with sexual harassment complaints, and basically it's a complaint policy that sets forth how complaints are going to be handled. And it's basically the same policy, except it relates to students versus employees. That's the best explanation I can give.
Any questions from board members?
Now, if there are no questions on that... Oh, I see, you got to call.
Is there any other questions? Move on to 8.07, policy JB equal. Joe?
And just one question, I'm trying to
A little quicker next
understand,
time,
under the VSBA version of the policy, why was that marked up?
I can't speak to the VSBA.
Oh, no, I'm not asking you, I'm asking whoever, it didn't make sense to me when I was going through this, so I'm asking whoever, oh, wait a minute, am I in the right one now?
No.
You're on the right one.
Can I move on to policy JB?
Yes.
Okay, policy JB, equal educational opportunities, non-discrimination.
Well,
I'll just go to Mr. Lacy.
Please.
okay. You know, we had a fairly robust discussion, I thought, at the last board meeting. And then I was sent back to make certain changes. And we were dealing then with policy
JFHA.
JFHA, okay?
Obviously.
And then I started looking at JFHA, and that's, Ms. Cordasco and I had a very spirited discussion about that particular policy. And then I started looking at that, and then I looked at JB, and I said, my gosh, there's a tremendous amount of overlap here. And my philosophy is anytime you have two policies that basically on the same subject matter, there's always a chance to screw up either having a time limit that's different in one versus a time limit different in the other, and so on and so forth. So, using only the privilege that I have, I took and combined the two policies for your consideration. And when I did, I want to assure you that I went down and I made several changes that have been requested, or at least requested. I'll take a look, the dangling phrase, some of the language in the policy, putting in the affirmative statement about the First Amendment rights, which you'll find in here. And we did that. So what this does is and I also like to start out a policy with an affirmative statement versus a negative statement. So this starts out with an affirmative statement about the school board being committed to maintaining an educational environment, yada, 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 which I think is exceedingly important that we actually communicate in a positive way where it is we're after. And then we go on and talk about the fact that the students who may be harassed by other students, by staff, and by third parties, which is law. I mean, we can't allow third parties to come into the school and harass employees or students. And then, again, it deals with the it deals with the First Amendment portion. I think it's fairly straightforward. The complaint procedure is basically the same complaint procedure that we followed for harassment. We didn't come in and invent a new one. We didn't invent a new wheel that we had to work with. And that's basically what we did. And I promise you that I did everything that was on my list to do. I think you'll find.
Okay.
I'll be happy to answer any questions and take any slings and arrows that they're thrown at me.
Any board members have any questions?
No, comments should pass.
Mr. Fuentes?
All right, so I understand what you're saying, that about merging them, because you know, when I got these, in fact, I've had a hard time understanding, because we had the VSBA one, which is supposed to be the model that we followed, and the model, for some reason, is marked up and then lined out. So I didn't quite understand that. But the other part, I haven't had a lot of time to look at this, but the JB part deals with EEO. That's the purpose of JB.
Well, and discrimination and harassment other than sexual harassment.
Okay, so then what was, well, when you look at the purpose of, although...
JBCC deals solely with sexual harassment.
Right, and then when you look at JFHA...
Which is gone.
Well, now it's gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
Now it's gone.
Now it's gone.
Okay, so the JFHA, the purpose of that one was prohibit the prohibition of harassment and retaliation.
Same thing. And we got all that in here. I mean, believe me.
So EEO, you're saying EEO is the same thing as this?
No, I mean, we're dealing with all of that in this one policy.
Well, okay, and that's my question. Okay, I get where you can, I know there's a lot of like things, but there's EEO, and then there's this other thing. So are the, okay, you can always mix everything, but there's, you know, they're alike, but they're not quite the same.
Well, let me help you out in this regard. Our EEO policy, the only provision in there was, and it's captured in here, is that James City County School Board is committed to the provision of equity and educational programs, services, and activities for all students, and for maintaining educational environments free from discrimination. That is our equal educational opportunity policy, and that's in here. That's the very first statement that appears in this policy. Then we go on to talk about, we prohibit discrimination and harassment of any student enrolled on the basis of sex, gender, yada, yada, yada. And we also point out the fact that it's prohibited for any employee to tolerate any such discrimination or harassment. And then we go on to talk about investigating complaints, the definition of discrimination and harassment. So we sort of blended, it was a lot of repetition in the two policies. And I'll be candid with you, I just didn't think the policies were as direct, individually were as direct as this policy is, this combined policy. It's straightforward, it's correct. I think it's fairly simple in stating what the philosophy of the board is. It's fairly simple in stating what's prohibited. It's fairly simple in stating how one makes a complaint and what's so on and so forth. Now, obviously, you all may differ, but that's what this is. So nothing has been omitted. I can assure you, nothing that was prohibited by either of the old policies and nothing that was permitted by either of the old policies has been deleted. But we didn't kill as many trees.
Or use as many of the alphabet. Mr. Fuentes, you good?
Well, I guess I guess I'm trying to understand, there was a reason why someone made a policy on EEO, and there's a reason why someone did this, and I'm trying to understand why. And there's usually, although similar, the one focuses on this, and they want to put the focus on that, and the other wants to focus on this, and they want to focus on the other thing. That's why. So when you combine the two, and I haven't, again, I only had a day to look at this, so, and I'm not a lawyer, so
I think that
I'm just trying to understand it.
I think if you take a look at the SBA model policies, and I do think it's very worthwhile to subscribe to the policy services, you will notice that there are a number of policies that are somewhat redundant.
Yes.
And that's so that you sort of have a Chinese menu to choose from. My concern about redundancy, and maybe it's just my own personal concern about redundancy, is that, you know, anytime you're redundant, sometimes you send mixed messages.
Yes.
And things of that sort. And I just thought a more direct way of doing it might be preferable to you. Now, if you want to, I can separate them. I can do surgery like Siamese twins and separate these things. But
Are you good, Joe?
I'm fine.
Dr. Carson?
Mrs. Cordasco.
You explained yourself well enough. All right.
Mrs. Cordasco.
I guess two things. Can you help me understand why we are using both sex and gender? Because I thought the end of our discussion was that we were not going to.
well, number one, I think that you know, the VSBA uses that. I also, if you recall, told you that I've actually been in cases in which courts have interpreted Title VII, for instance, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex, they use the word gender, the same as they use sex. I don't necessarily agree with it because I think they're two different terms, but the courts use gender and sex interchangeably a lot of times. And they have. I've actually been involved in cases. I remember the first case I had was back in the 80s. I won't go into the facts of the school system, but it was an employment case. So I think it's meant to mean basically the same thing as sex, but the courts have expressed it in terms of gender. I don't know anybody that said, don't do it. But, you know, I don't know whether that helps you or not.
I don't know. I thought that was part of our discussion last time as well.
Well, and I thought I addressed it the last time. We may be at the point where we agree to disagree. I don't know. But it's something where I can assure you I could go to courts and I can court decisions and show where they talk in terms of gender.
So could we not just say gender? Or one or the other? I mean, it just seems like, again, why are we doing that?
Well, just to make it clear that regardless of what term you use, we prohibit discrimination based on that.
Yeah. Can you say, okay.
Can I say what?
I don't know.
I'm good with it.
I know, I hear you. One of the things I appreciate is that we've narrowed the spectrum quite a bit, and I think that's really what the challenge to many of the other cases were very broad. So I think it's good that we've detailed things and.
But now, don't forget that when we say things, for instance, and I don't want to mislead the board, when you prohibit discrimination on the basis of disability, which you really have to do, okay? the definition that what's prohibited under federal law, the way it's expressed in federal law is not only that you discriminate against somebody who has a disability, but somebody who you perceive as having a disability. Okay? So the perception comes in. We don't need to state it because if we prohibit discrimination on disability, that means if you perceive somebody to have a disability, it's prohibited. Yeah.
Great. Any other comments from board members? Okay, so we'll put this on the agenda for next week for that. And move on to 8.08, 2015-2016 Student Code of Conduct. Mr. Lacey, thank you for...
This one,
this is not you.
You're done. Well, it is me in the sense I probably violated my...
Thank you, Lacey.
Mr. Flint, is it like to call out, they have to discuss?
Mr. Chairman, there was a request by the board to show the markups in the document, and I think that's been done.
Yeah, it's helpful. Thank you.
No other changes.
No, I was just going to review what the changes
Okay.
were. Since we really didn't address this, we ended up pulling this at the last meeting because of the changes to this policy, so we didn't review it. So if I can just walk you through those real quickly. The school year was changed throughout. Obviously, this is for this coming school year, 2015-16. We did add a general non-discrimination statement added to the first page. The policy will also be included, but we wanted to put it up front. Starting on about page 4, and I do apologize, the pages didn't get added when we went and did the red lines. Pages 4 through 12, you'll see at the bottom in red, it says the consequence level is directly related to the severity of the infraction and is determined during the disciplinary process. We had that at the end of the rules last year as an explanation of the levels. It was recommended by the schools and discussed with the Code of Conduct Committee, and they supported the fact that it would be good for everyone that utilizes the Code of Conduct book to have that statement on any page where the rules or consequences are listed. So that's what we've done on pages 4 through 12. The rules changes that you see are very minor, and those were approved by you at the last meeting as part of policy JFC. We added athletics to the hazing rule. We added bring your own device to the technology misuse, and electronic paraphernalia to the tobacco rule. The only other revisions that are in here that you see redlined and added in are the two policies that came before you tonight, JBCC and JB.
Any comments from board members?
I'd like that language in there. Is it not possible to put that in there? It doesn't prohibit First Amendment.
It's in policy JB.
Right, but is it in the actual student handbook?
In policy JB in the student handbook, yes ma'am.
Yeah, it's right here.
Policy JB is in the
Page
handbook.
37.
Okay, I'm looking. Where?
Ms. Larson?
We just discussed
But-
about the race, color, religion, sex, gender. Did we want to add gender there to make it consistent, or with your discrimination statement you have, or not? Is that just a...
This was just a general non-discrimination. We can if you want, but that was
Well,
just
I
a
just, to
general-
keep the language consistent, I didn't know if, but I'll...
Where is that? I'm sorry, where?
Right above the table of contents.
Oh, on the...
Correct.
Yeah. If we were trying to stay uniform, if not...
No, it makes sense.
Okay.
I cannot get it to you.
Okay, Ruth, where was that again?
On the first page.
Got you. Okay. All right. And so if any changes that the First Amendment things that Mr. Lacey talked about tonight, those will be folded into here.
It's on page 37. This policy shall not be interpreted to infringe upon the First Amendment rights of students and is not intended to prohibit protected expressions of
37.
religious, philosophical, or political views.
Perfect.
37.
It's on page, yeah, I know you don't have the pages, but
It's,
Yeah, we do.
when you get to JB.
No, on the computer you do.
When you
Oh.
scroll through, it's
But not on the
it's on the
paper.
computer.
Oh, that's a PDF, page 37.
It's the 5th paragraph of JB.
it's 8 from the, it's 9 from the back.
Ah, I get it. Okay, there it is.
Right here. There you go. Any other comments on this? So we'll put this on the agenda for next week to approve. Moving on to action items 9.01, personnel actions. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, I move the personnel actions as presented.
This evening, second. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? It's been moved and second to approve the personnel actions as presented this evening. Ms. Urza?
Mrs. Cardasco. Aye. Ms. Emanuel.
Aye.
Mr. Fuentes.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Nichols.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye. Thank you. 9.02, release from compulsory attendance, case number R16-03. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of release from compulsory attendance case number R16-03.
Second.
Question on?
This, because I was under my impression that they didn't have to do testing if they were getting a religious exemption, so I was surprised to see the testing.
Well, but maybe they just...
They did it on their own.
Oh, okay. Do people know, are they aware?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I don't know whether they were.
That's something that parents have done.
Right, okay.
They just included it with their...
Yeah, it's just that with the religious exemption, was I incorrect in the way it is that with the religious exemption, you don't have to provide testing, but for other homeschool requests, you do have to provide testing, is that correct?
That is correct.
So this was something they did voluntarily on their own?
Choice on the part of parents.
Well, we can't assume that, we don't
Right.
know, so,
That's what I
but I
was-
mean, that's up to, I know that Ms. Bourgeois' office has always communicates probably.
Well, the source of that was a homeschool organization out of Lynchburg or someplace.
Yeah. I just don't want us to assume anything.
Words of the day. Any other discussion on this release from compulsory attendance? It's moved in second for release to approve release from compulsory attendance case number R16-03. Ms. Surza?
Ms. Emanuel.
Aye.
Mr. Fuentes.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Nichols.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Mrs. Cardasco.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye. Action item 9.03, approval of non-resident tuition rates for school year 15-16. Is there a motion?
So moved for approval of non-resident tuition rates for school year 15-16.
Second.
Is there any discussion? It's been moved and seconded for approval of the non-resident tuition rates for school year 15-16. Ms. Urza?
Mr. Fuentes.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Nichols.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Ms. Cardasco.
Aye.
Ms. Emanuel.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye. 9.04, Bayport, approval of Bayport Credit Union contract. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Just a reminder that this was offered to a number of different banks. This is the only one that applied. This has been a great program, so we're not just rubber stamping something that came through in case somebody didn't watch the meeting last time.
Right.
This was properly, this did go out to...
And this does expand it from War Hill to the other two high
Just doing
schools.
what we piloted in one school.
We
Right.
piloted at War Hill last year and moved it to the other two schools, so
Right, I just would request that, I hope that they'll let the board know when they open those branches, and so that, I know that we were informed when War Hill did theirs. I think it was a hard date, but anyway, I think it's really exciting, and I appreciate their wanting to partner with our students.
great, and good life lessons for our kids. So I think it's a great
Yeah, I just
program.
read something today where those skills are still very much lacking, even though that's a course that's now required, but anything we can do to help get more financial literacy out there. So.
Any other discussion? It's moved and seconded to approve the Bayport Credit Union contract. Ms. Surza?
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Nichols.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Mrs. Cardasco.
Aye.
Ms. Emanuel.
Aye.
Mr. Fuentes.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye. Action item 9.05, policy GB, equal employment / non-discrimination, second reading. Is there a motion?
There's, so moved.
Is there a second?
Adoption.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Fuentes.
Okay, I knew there was something here, and he's gone now. I'm trying to, okay, so JB, this is the equivalent of JB, right? This
This is the employee version.
the employee version. So
Yes.
what did this get merged in with?
It did.
It didn't? So why didn't we merge this one like we did the other one? Very, very similar.
I believe JFHA was the bullying policy also merged with the student.
No, 'cause JHFA was a similar one with another, that was the one that was a personnel and student one. And we split those into two, and then we took the JB one and merged, the JHF, whatever it was, we merged that with JB, but we didn't merge the other one with GB. That's what I'm just trying to understand. For consistency, I don't, again, or are they just so different that,
There was one to merge.
what's that?
There was one with deleting. I don't think there was nothing to merge, I don't think.
There's no,
There,
I think they were just so different. And we already had a GB policy, so this is just to revise that, to add, it stipulates that we are an equal employment opportunity employer, and it provides the complaint procedure and identifies the compliance officer and prohibits retaliation.
So was the policy that was merged on the student side was a bullying policy, right? Correct. And there's no bullying policy for adults, it's called harassment.
And that's what we talked about earlier this evening.
So there's no bullying policy so there's nothing to merge into the employee policy.
Okay, so, you're talking about the JHFA one?
I believe that's what I'm talking about. I don't know the numbers, the letters, but
JFA,
This is-
JFHA, I don't like those letters either.
No.
There's no corresponding GFHA.
right.
There's nothing to merge.
JFHA and GBA were the ones that were the same before. We split them into two, right?
This is not JFHA.
And then he took JB and merged that with JFHA, right? GBA now is sitting there by itself, but not merged with GB.
Or we did not merge them
Because they're different.
on the employee side.
Okay, so
One is once you're I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
One
Go
is
ahead.
once you're an employee, the other one is about becoming an employee,
Right.
which are two different things. Is that correct?
Well, it
Well,
looks like it is an equal opportunity employer.
And it does provide all the
Discrimination and
procedures of
recruitment,
complaint
selection,
procedures.
hiring,
It's just,
Right. But,
promotion,
right,
retention,
yeah, training though.
facilities,
Yeah.
programs, activities are accessible,
So it's sort of
usable,
a
and
difference.
available.
Okay.
It seems too different to me.
Okay, so then maybe on the JB one, that goes back to my whole thing about there was a reason why equal opportunity was separate. And this one's talking about we won't discriminate in areas, in all the different areas in employment. The JB one, our original one was somewhat deficient, so that one should have said that, where does it talk about when the class, that he merged it with this thing about harassment and all that sort of stuff, but where's this thing, the part about talking about, and maybe it's in there and I missed it, but does that policy, the other policy for the students talk about the same thing, about as a student, you don't discriminate when you select classes, when you do this, you do that, you go for football, blah, 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 blah. Is that covered, is that covered under the JB policy?
the student
What's that?
you talking about the student policy?
Right. Right, And I apologize if I'm slowing this down, but there's...
It's fine.
No,
Tonight,
We're fine.
I think I can try to help clarify that a little bit. When we presented JFHA GBA last time as a joint policy, if you recall, JFHA was a new policy. It didn't exist for students. GBA already existed, so it was a revision. In our discussions with Mr. Lacey following the last meeting, it focused primarily on the conversation for students, because that's where the biggest questions came in, and JFHA was not currently a policy we had. Therefore, he could, through his reasoning, embed it with the JB, which is what we just presented. We didn't have a JFHA to have to revise or delete. We just condensed it in with JB. So I think that's why there's the 2 for students. And then GBA already existed, so what was presented last time was a revision.
okay. I don't know if anyone's understand my point. You're telling me right now there's 2 different functions being served by 2 different procedures. And one's an EEO policy, and then the other one deals with the harassment and whatever. I'm getting all the names mixed up, but they're 2 distinct policies.
And then also one's dealing with like Title IX type issues. So that's where you're getting into 3.
Right, so then on the other side, we had an EEO policy, maybe not the best written policy, maybe needed to be worked on, the JB policy. And then we introduced this new policy, which is very similar to that other policy, but we went ahead and merged them. And now not 2 distinct policies, serving kind of a merged purpose. And that's where I'm saying that's why I say sometimes there's a reason why the policies are separate. In this case, you're saying there's a reason why they're separate, and it's very distinct, and maybe what the problem was, not with JFH, whatever that JHF, the 4-letter one. Maybe the problem was with the 2-letter one that should have been revised to provide more definition and clarity for EEO. Do you know what I'm saying? So maybe while we had our eye on the ball on that 4-letter one, we missed what was going on with the 2-letter one. That's what I guess what I'm a little bit concerned about. I don't know if that made any sense, but...
Ms. Cook?
Just to follow up on what Mr. Fuentes is saying, I think if you look at the BSBA policy, JB, it says the school board shall provide facilities, provide a free appropriate education, not exclude qualified disabled. There's that bulleted list that I don't think made it into the, is that what you're talking about, Joe?
Yeah, I can't, and like I said,
it didn't make it into the latest revision, I guess is what I suspect.
Yeah, that's what, right, that one is focusing on EEO issues.
So you're talking about the student policies, or are you talking about?
Student policies.
JB.
The policy JB.
Same as the personnel. The personnel one is focusing on EEO and focusing on this other harassment bully thing. And then the student one, which was parallel to that.
Give some examples.
It's slightly different.
Like in 205?
Yeah, but give examples.
Right, but so
Maybe I'm missing, I could be missing something, so.
the list of providing facilities, programs, and activities that are accessible, usable, available to qualified disabled persons, providing the free appropriate education, including non-academic and extracurricular services to qualified. That list that's in the sample JB policy is no longer in the JB policy that is in front of us.
Okay, so the policy GB that we have in front of us,
Right.
we're good with the policy GB, Joe? Your concern is going back to the JB and the...
Right, this one, okay, so yeah, you're right. We can probably get through this, but this one is making me, I'm going to go back and we'll have to go back and reconsider that one. I mean, we're not done.
Right.
So, yes, I'm okay that we have 2 different policies in this case.
Okay.
So, yeah. And maybe the other one's okay. I just
Yeah, we just need to, we got a week to figure it out.
Right.
Okay. Any other discussion on policy GB, equal employment, non-discrimination? It's been moved and seconded to approve policy GB, equal employment, non-discrimination. Ms. Surza?
Mr. Nichols?
Aye.
Ms. Cook?
Aye.
Mrs. Cardasco?
Aye.
Ms. Emanuel?
Aye.
Mr. Fuentes?
Aye.
And Mrs. Larson has stepped out of the room. And Mr. Kelly?
Aye. Action item 9.06, policy GBAA, equal employment opportunities deletion. Is there a motion?
I move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on policy GBAA, equal employment opportunities deletion?
So just.
Mr.
this is-
Fuentes.
Now, this one got pulled into this, to the GBA.
To the
correct?
GB.
GB, excuse me. GB. This one is now part of GB, and it actually goes into greater detail.
Correct.
Excuse me?
Okay, any other discussion on policy GBAA, equal employment opportunities deletion? It's been moved and seconded to delete policy GBAA, equal employment opportunities. Ms. Surza?
Mrs. Cardasco?
Aye.
Ms. Emanuel?
Aye.
Mr. Fuentes?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
I'll abstain since I was absent for the discussion.
Mr. Nichols?
Aye.
Ms. Cook?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye. Item 9.07, policy GCBEA, leave of absence for non-FMLA eligible employees, retitled leave without pay. Motion for approval of that policy?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of policy GCBEA, leave of absence for non-FMLA eligible employees, retitled leave without pay. Second reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? It's been moved and seconded for approval of policy GCBEA, leave of absence for non-FMLA eligible employees, retitled leave without pay. Ms. Surza?
Mr. Fuentes?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Nichols?
Aye.
Ms. Cook?
Aye.
Mrs. Cardasco?
Aye.
Ms. Emanuel?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye. 10.01, board members' comments. Any board member comments this evening?
Yes.
Ms. Cordasco?
I was happy to go to the summer school graduation. I know Mr. Kelly was well on his way, and he was stuck in terrible traffic on Route 64, so
Yes, indeed.
his intentions were all good. But it was very much appreciated by the students that graduated. I also was able to go to the project-based learning that they had over this year at Blayton, and very interesting to see how they combined a number of different ways to encourage learning over the summer. So that was enjoyable.
Thank you for going to that summer school graduation. I had a good view from where I was. Ms. Cook?
I appreciated hearing from the Clean County Commission today, and hope that our schools are actively working on recycling, particularly thinking about the environment, and those styrofoam trays in the cafeterias would be great to completely eliminate those if at all possible.
Any other board member comments? Ms. Manning?
Comments?
Following up on that, the comments from the speaker earlier, how much is the school involved with working with the county with that? I mean, I don't think we'll be able to get the answer, but I would like to understand how that's working, and how are we putting separate trash cans in there that are, is that being done?
I can't speak to that, I'm sorry, other than elementary school.
I didn't mean to be looking at you when I was saying it.
We'll get you something.
Ms. Larson, please answer that right now.
I know I care deeply about the environment, but I do not know the whole procedures here in the school division.
No, I would like to understand that, though, because I do think that's a good practice with that many students.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to even set the example and train the students and get to that. Ms. Larson?
I was wondering if we could get an update on the class that we the students, the high schoolers for the economics class that's required prior to graduation, personal finance. If we could get an update on how that went, I would imagine it's coming to a close soon, or maybe it's over, but
The summer school class?
Online.
well, that was online, that was offered
Okay.
to a very few students, not that I'm bitter, and see how that went.
Okay.
Yeah, and is it possible that we'll be offering that again in the future, online like that?
Okay, any other board member comments? I presume the next meeting we'll get an update on the construction projects? from
Yes,
the
architects will be here. Well, summer projects?
Summer projects,
We'll send you something, but we will have a middle school conversation.
at the next board meeting? Great, great. Once again, I think I would like to congratulate the board on the discussions tonight. Lots of good input, lots of good comments. I really appreciate everybody's engagement and interest and concern about these policies. Policy can be somewhat of mundane, boring thing, but it is important, and I think every member of this board put the level of importance on it that it needs to be. So I just want to thank everyone for their work on that.
Mr. Kelly, I'd like to say that I really appreciated Ms. Lacy being here and guiding us through that. That was really important.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Any other comments? Upcoming meetings, 11.01, 8:18:15, 6:30. We are in Building F in the county, August 18th, next Tuesday. And then we have a work session and action items on September 1st at 6:30 here in room 400 in Blair. Ms. Surza, I think we have set the agenda for the next meeting,
Yes, we have.
and without objection, we're adjourned. Thank you.